Before Max Verstappen could read, he was already being prepared for the most dangerous sport on Earth. Not enrolled, not introduced, not shown. Prepared, the way you prepare a weapon. His father, Jos Verstappen, was a Formula One driver. Not a great one. Competitive, tough, occasionally brilliant, but never a champion. And Jos had decided, before Max could form a coherent sentence, that his son would be what he never managed to become. The decision was not discussed. It was not a family conversation. It was a plan. And it began almost the moment Max could hold a steering wheel. At 4 years old, Max Verstappen was put in a kart, not a toy, a racing kart. By 7, he was competing. By 10, he was winning national championships. By 13, he was the best young kart racer in the world. And through all of it, Jos was there, watching, coaching, correcting, pushing, celebrating rarely, criticizing often. Most fathers teach their children to ride a bike. Jos Verstappen was teaching his son to survive at 150 kilometers per hour. Now here is where the story gets strange. Because what Jos was doing, without knowing the science, without reading a single paper on developmental psychology, was constructing one of the most effective elite performance programs ever applied to a child. And the results would eventually shock the entire world of motorsport. To understand why, you need to understand what it actually takes to drive a Formula One car at the limit. It is not about courage. Every driver in Formula One has courage. You cannot get there without it. What separates the truly great from the merely excellent is something researchers have spent decades trying to quantify: the ability to process information at superhuman speed, to make correct decisions in environments where the margin for error is measured in milliseconds, where a mistake at 300 kilometers per hour does not give you a second chance. Neuroscientist Timo Baumgartner has studied elite racing drivers and found something remarkable. At peak performance, managing a high-speed corner, monitoring tire degradation, calculating brake points, watching rivals, experienced Formula One drivers shift into a mode of processing that bypasses conscious thought entirely. They are not deciding. They are not calculating. They are pattern matching at a speed that the rational mind cannot keep up with. This is not talent. This is training. This is what 10,000 hours in a kart from the age of 4 builds inside a human nervous system. And Jos Verstappen understood this, not in the language of neuroscience, but in the language of a racing driver who had spent his career watching his own reflexes fall slightly short of what was required. He knew, in his bones, that the window for building this kind of nervous system is narrow, that it opens in early childhood, and that it does not stay open long. So he did not waste it. The training was relentless. Weekends consumed by racing, evenings consumed by analysis, every lap scrutinized, every mistake examined. Jos was not a gentle coach. Those who observed the Verstappen family during those karting years describe a father who expected perfection, who made his disappointment visible. There were arguments. There were tears. There was, by almost every account, very little of what you would call a normal childhood. And Max, rather than breaking under this pressure, absorbed it. What Jos was doing matches exactly what developmental psychologist Anders Ericsson called deliberate practice. Not repetition for its own sake, but repetition with immediate feedback at the edge of current ability in conditions of high consequence. The kart track was a perfect deliberate practice environment. Every lap produced a result. Every error had a visible cost. Every improvement was measurable. And the stakes always felt real. By 16, the question was no longer whether Max was good enough for Formula One. The question was whether Formula One was ready for him. Red Bull thought it was. In 2014, they signed him to their junior program. He was 17. In May 2015, at 17 years and 166 days old, Max Verstappen started his first Formula One race. He became the youngest driver in the history of the sport to start a Grand Prix, a record that, by regulation, will never be broken. The minimum age for an F1 super license has since been raised because of what Verstappen's example revealed about just how young a human being can be pushed to the absolute limit of motorsport. His early races were not flawless. He made mistakes. He crashed. He pushed too hard where experience would have counseled patience. But from the very first laps, the paddock noticed something it had not seen in a generation: an absolute absence of intimidation. Every young driver who enters Formula One goes through a period of adjustment, a psychological recalibration as the reality of competing against the best in the world at the highest speeds on Earth settles into the nervous system. For most drivers, this takes months. For some, it takes years. For Max Verstappen, it appeared not to happen at all. Former world champion Nico Rosberg described it publicly. There was something different about the way Verstappen attacked corners, the way he defended positions, the way he raced wheel to wheel without flinching, as if the fear that moderates other drivers, that invisible governor that prevents even the best from extracting every last fraction of performance, had simply never been installed. Jos had removed it, year by year, lap by lap, through a childhood spent at the absolute limit. He had acclimatized his son to an environment that would terrify anyone who had not been raised inside it. Formula One was not the most intense place Max Verstappen had ever operated. Jos Verstappen's karting sessions were. In May 2016, Red Bull promoted Verstappen to their senior team for the Spanish Grand Prix. His first race in a Red Bull, he won it. At 18 years and 228 days old, Max Verstappen became the youngest race winner in Formula One history. The paddock went quiet in a way it rarely does. This was not a prodigy finding his level. This was a driver arriving already at a level that most would spend entire careers trying to reach. The seasons that followed were refinement, not development. Verstappen was already fast. What he was building was judgment, emotional regulation, the ability to absorb a full season of pressure, mechanical failures, strategic errors, political turbulence, without losing the clarity that produces great performances. In 2021, he won his first world championship. It went to the final lap of the final race, decided by a controversial safety car call that will be debated for decades. And in that final lap, with everything on the line, Verstappen drove with the calm of a man who had been in pressure situations since he was 4 years old. Because he had been. In 2022, he won again, more dominantly. In 2023, he won again, 15 victories in a single season, a record that redrew the boundaries of what modern Formula One thought was possible. And through all of it, the story the numbers cannot capture is the story of a boy in a kart and a father who believed, correctly, ruthlessly, at considerable cost, that greatness is not discovered. It is built. Before Max Verstappen could read, Jos Verstappen had already decided what his son would become. And the most remarkable thing about this story is not that it worked. It is that it worked exactly as planned.